You're not broke because of $5 lattes. You're broke because of the silent money leaks that drain your bank account without you ever noticing. And in this video, I'll expose the real money traps and help you reclaim thousands of dollars to build real wealth starting now. Let's jump in. As always, I would really appreciate it if you like this video and if you subscribe to my channel. That would mean a lot, especially if you learn something new. So let's talk about what's really wasting your money. Believe it or not, there are a lot of things out there. We're only going to be touching upon a couple of items that I think are really great ways to rebuild your wealth. So what I'm not here to do, just to make sure I clarify and level set, first of all, I'm not here to shame your favorite coffee shop. I know people like coffee. I know people like eating out. I know people like brunch, all that fun stuff. I'm not here to shame any of that. I'm also not here to tell you to buy generic peanut butter instead of your favorite organic peanut butter or your favorite organic type of meal or food. No, that's not my role here today. I'm going to be talking about much bigger items. So what I like, just to give you a little bit of an example of how I spend my money. First of all, I love pampering my dog. My dog, my dog is very important to me, and I love pampering him by buying him treats and toys, and yes, admittedly also clothes sometimes, which he likes to some extent. Obviously that costs money, right? Again, it's all about finding that balance. So again, I know that most people that would see me pamper my dog, they might say, all right, Fiona, maybe this is a little bit of a wasted amount of money. But for me, that's important, and that's okay. Same with you. I'm sure you have other things that you really like spending money on, and that's okay. I also love spending money on education. Believe it or not, I feel like I'm an internal nerd, and I really do appreciate and enjoy learning new things, and I'm okay spending that money, even if it's a little bit more than normal. I'm okay with that, and that's okay. But for that, I also take away from my spending habits in other areas. It's always a balance, right? It's always a scale. If you are okay spending money a little bit more toward one item, you need to make sure you remove spending money in another category so it always balances out. And that's really what we're going to be talking about. So the problem really here is, and a lot of people face this problem, that the stuff that we're spending money on that we don't notice, that's a big issue. Okay, so these are those silent money leaks that drain our bank account. Those are the ones that I mentioned earlier starting this video. So this is what I would call phantom spending, right? And here's a little cartoon, right? You have your phantom, these are the silent money leaks. This is you thinking, you're doing everything right with your financial situation, and yet it leaves you broke, or at least it drains your bank account compared to where it could be. And that over your lifetime, it can really add up to hundreds of thousands of dollars. I'm not just saying in cold hard money, but I'm also mentioning hundreds of thousands of dollars in opportunity costs. Like, how much could that money that you could have saved, these phantom spending, these silent leaks, have added up into long-term investments? Maybe it could have compounded, it could have built you equity, it could have given you more education, you could have bought education with that lost money, which could have then leveled you up, which could have then ended you up with a better job. Who knows? That's the opportunity cost, right? So it really can add up to hundreds of thousands of dollars if you really think about the opportunity cost. And oftentimes, especially in business school, that is what you learn about, the opportunity cost. You always want to ask yourself, what's the next best option that you could have spent your money on? And whatever that next best option is, that's your opportunity cost. So very important to think about it that way. Your money is your business, and you need to treat it like you're the CFO, which is the chief financial officer of your household or of your money. And you really want to start thinking about, okay, what are the trade-offs? What is the opportunity cost if I decide to spend my money here instead of doing something else with it? And then that decision alone can help you figure out, do I go down this route and actually spend my money, or do I decide to reroute my money and spending and move it for something else? So here's what I think is very scary, and here's some statistics. The average American spends about $7,400 per year on things that aren't necessary and that cost a lot in terms of the opportunity cost. Unused subscriptions. I want you to think about your own unused subscriptions. I have actually another scary statistic, in a couple of minutes about unused subscriptions. Impulse buys, like how often does it happen when you're upset or angry or maybe excited or maybe neutral? You go into the grocery store or somewhere else, you see something, you're like, yep, I want that. And you go ahead and buy it. But in reality, you never came into the store with that intention of buying it. Again, what is the opportunity cost of that? And how often does such impulse buy happen, right? How often do these buys happen? What is the average cost of these buys? And then over time, you can kind of annualize like the actual cost, the actual physical cost of those impulse buys. And then you could think about like, okay, how much money would it, like over my lifetime, would this actually cost me? And believe it or not, the answer is quite a bit. Fees. Are you maybe late on your credit cards, on your credit card payments? And do you have to pay credit card fees? This is just an example of fees. Credit card fees can be completely avoided actually if you automate your monthly credit card payments. That's a great way to not pay those pesky little $25 a month fees for your credit card. So that's just another way. If you automate your payments, at least on your credit cards or any other cards where you might incur fees, great way to cut out that phantom spending. And then lifestyle inflation. This is also known as lifestyle creep. This is something that is a phenomenon, especially from when you're maybe age 20, when you're in your 20s and you go up to, your 40s maybe and your 50s and beyond. What happens here between these age frames? First of all, typically you make more money, right? In your 20s, you're probably at the start of your career. Here, you're probably at the peak or toward the peak of your career. So that means you're making a lot more money in your 40s and 50s than in your 20s. You probably also have families, whatever family means, right? Whether that means you have pets, you have kids, you have a partner, whatever it means. But generally in your 20s, you probably are by yourself or you don't have that many people to take care of. In your 40s and 50s, you might even have your parents to take care of. They're aging, right? Maybe you have to take them in, provide for them, etc. So oftentimes you have a lot more financial responsibilities as you grow older, but you're also making more money. So what does that mean? It means you're probably spending more money, even though you're making more money. And that spending could be on healthcare costs. It could be on bigger housing costs, right? You could maybe have a larger house because you have more people in your family. The list goes on. But the point stands, that all is part of lifestyle creep. In your 20s, for example, you're probably living in a pretty small apartment. Maybe you have a house, but the house is probably small, on the smaller side. Again, you're at the start of your career. You probably don't have such a big family yet. And that will likely shift over time. And that is lifestyle creep because over time, we do spend more money, or we tend to spend more money on larger cars, nicer homes, nicer vacations. But all of that can really impact how much money you keep in the bank account. And this especially is something that is attributed to losing, money and losing wealth. So really make sure you take a look and audit how much you're spending over the decades, especially. So compare, when you're 35, compare how much you spent when you were 25. Of course, there's some things that aren't apples to apples. For example, if you have a kid at 35, probably not the same cost situation as when you were 25. But the point stands, right? So lifestyle inflation really does impact a lot of people. So over time, this can add up to about $370, almost $400,000 over about 50 years. And that's not even including investment gains or other opportunity costs, which is not good. Here's an example. The top, in terms of subscriptions, right? We were talking about unused subscriptions. The top 5 unused video streaming services include this. So Disney Plus, about 30% of subscribers didn't use Disney Plus in the last 30 days, in the last month. That's pretty shocking, right? I mean, that's like a third of people that own Disney Plus don't use it. So maybe we should reassess our spending because Disney Plus can be a pretty penny and, cut that out. We don't necessarily need it. Prime Video, about a fifth or 22% in this case of folks did not watch Prime Video in the last 30 days. Netflix, very similar, a fifth again. Apple TV, a fifth, and then HBO Max, a little bit less than a fifth. So these are some platforms. If you own them, I want you to also do your own assessment, your own audit. When was the last time you used your own subscription platform? And does it even warrant the subscription anymore? Those are some questions you need to ask yourself. This I thought was interesting too. This goes from 1901 all the way to 2023. So we're looking at over an entire century worth of spending breakdown on food, clothing, and housing as a percent of income, right? So if you make $100, you spend $10 on food, that's 10% of money spent on food. That's how that's calculated. And I thought this would be interesting because, again, of the concept of lifestyle inflation and lifestyle creep. Of course, this also has to do with actual inflation, but I thought this was interesting to see how different things changed over time and priorities changed as well. So take a look here. The very first thing I notice is that this purple bar, which represents clothing, represented actually a pretty large percentage of someone's income back in the 1900s, but clothing actually decreased by quite a bit. So we're not necessarily spending that much as a share of our income on clothing anymore. What also saw a drastic decrease is the green line, which is food. So food has also really shrunken down. However, the blue piece, which is housing, has actually increased over time. So our share of income that has been spent on housing has increased and is about a quarter, or 25% now, of our income. So 25% of our income on average we spend on housing, which roughly makes sense. So now the question is there a way for us to actually reduce our housing costs? Does that mean we need a roommate? Does that mean we need to downsize? Does that mean we need to move out of town instead of living downtown? These are some questions to start asking if we really want to target this lifestyle creep and start slashing costs for lifestyle creep. So just a good chart, and I thought it was interesting to just see the comparison over time and the shift of where our money was going. Here's another example. This here's from Capital One. We talk about average annual impulse spending. I think this impacts a lot of people, and myself included. I'll be real. I've certainly been subject to impulse spending. On average, per year, we spend between about $3,700. This was in 2022 after COVID, which makes sense because we got a lot of stimulus checks, right? So if you think about the stimulus checks that were sent to folks' bank accounts, a lot of people decided to spend that, which was exactly the purpose of the stimulus check. You're supposed to spend it into the economy to stimulate the economy. So that makes sense why 2022 did see more spending. Another reason also, inflation started ticking up, so maybe the cost of goods sold was a little bit more expensive. So this number makes sense. 2023, inflation again picked up. People maybe were starting to retract a little bit in their spending patterns. They didn't have the stimulus money left over. Also makes sense. And then finally, we've seen kind of this averaging out right now in 2025 when this video was made. We're looking at about $3,000 in annual impulse spending. Over 10 years, that equates to about $30,000, not including compounding investment and other opportunity costs. So if you think about it that way, if you try to expand it over 10 years or even, 50 years if you want to, this number can become quite easily into the double or into the 6 digits and further. So pretty interesting and a great way to hopefully motivate you to reduce your impulse spending. And then another example, I just found some statistics here from Capital One regarding impulse spending buying statistics. 36% of Americans say the majority of their purchases are unplanned. That's scary. Over a third of Americans do not plan their purchases. My suggestion here is to go into a grocery store, wherever you decide to go, and have a list or a budget and stick to that budget. If you don't stick to it, of course, it does not really make sense. These statistics are also extremely new. They are as of mid-2025. Here's another, I thought, really interesting one. Most shoppers, 89%, almost 90% of shoppers, have some history of impulse buying. 54% have spent $100 or more on an impulse buy. It's a lot of money, and if that happens and recurs every single month, you're looking at $1,200 easily every single month. And that doesn't even share how much they're doing right now, which is over $3,000 in impulse buys. So pretty shocking. 80% shop impulsively in brick and mortar stores, while impulse buying accounts for about 20% of e-commerce. I thought this was an interesting statistic because it shows that if you actually go out and go into a brick and mortar store, maybe if an attendant approaches you and kind of asks you, hey, are you going to buy this today? Maybe you feel bad and you actually want to buy it. So you have that person-to-person interaction, maybe some guilt, and that's why people are stuck buying things more so on impulse in brick and mortar stores versus e-commerce. Although I thought the number for e-commerce should be a little bit higher. I am a little surprised at that. Anyway, feel free to take a look at the rest of the statistics. I thought I would point out these couple ones. The next thing I wanted to show is consumer impulse buying by retail category. So not surprisingly, in my opinion at least, is clothing. Clothing is the highest, and probably women maybe tend to be a little bit more in this category than men. Food, groceries also, I can certainly see this one as well. 1 in every 2 Americans have some sort of impulse when it comes to food, groceries, household items, shoes, books, toys, and technology. Probably technology is on the bottom end here because technology tends to be a little bit more expensive. So maybe we pay a little bit more attention to how much we're spending, like in the hundreds of dollars, instead of, maybe tens or high tens or like almost hundreds of dollars for clothing and food. The average number of impulse purchases, I thought this was interesting too. In 25, the time of this video, we're looking at 120 impulse purchases per year. I thought that was interesting, and that's a lot too, especially if the average actual cost per impulse purchase is like, $20 or $50. This can add up quite fast. The annual social media impulse spending, also millennials are the highest. I honestly thought Gen Z would be a little bit higher. Maybe this is because not all have credit cards yet, not all have jobs yet. Maybe that's why it's a little bit lower. But I was not too surprised to see millennials up there. I just thought Gen Z would also be in the thousands. And then finally, average spend per impulse buy. Here's a great statistic. 2025, we're looking at $25. So $25 times 120 times 120 impulse buys, you get the point. So it can certainly add up to be quite a bit. All right, so how do we actually fix this? We just looked at the problem. We looked at some statistics of what is causing Americans to lose money and those phantom leaks. Now let's take a look at the top 5 sneaky money traps. So the very first thing that I think is causing Americans and others losing money is based on monthly payments. So here you see a car dealership, right? This lovely car dealership. You know why they love monthly budgets? Because it lets them upsell you. It's all about upselling. Because a $40,000 car over 84 months with interest costs a lot more than you think. It's not that monthly payment. It's actually, instead of $40,000, the car actually costs like $58,000 or whatever the interest is, right? You're not actually paying $40,000 for the car. You're paying a lot more for the car because of the financing option that a lot of people have to pursue because most people don't have $40,000 in cash lying around. So here's my tip to you. If you're at a car dealership and you're looking to buy a new or a used car, either way, but you're planning to have a sort of payment with interest, make sure you negotiate with the car dealer on total cost of ownership. So that includes the 84 months with interest and not just the monthly payments. This is a fantastic way to really look at how much you're going to owe over your lifetime for this car, which is not $40,000. It is a lot more than $40,000. And then based on that, you can negotiate with the dealer and ask them to come down on their pricing or maybe even on their interest rate, which helps you save money in the long run. So the next thing is skincare supplements and self-care creep. Now, this here, at least for me, applies. I certainly see this all over the place where you see some sort of a new miracle serum pop up like every 5 seconds. And, and they also cost a lot of money, right? They always try to upsell you. They always try to bundle these miracle serums. And self-care is certainly valid, right? You obviously want to take care of yourself. But stress spending does not equal wealth building, right? So you don't want to buy one new miracle serum every single time they come out, which is quite often. So what I would suggest you do is you choose one product that you're happy with and then test it for 30 days, right? Use it until it's done or use it for a month and then cut out the rest. So don't buy like 5 different miracle serums at the same time, which can seriously cost over $100 easily. It's quite easy to do that. Instead, you just find one that you're happy with. You don't have to feel guilty about buying it. and instead just focus on that one. And if you don't like it, fine. You can never have to buy it again, but just use one for now, okay? That is how you can save money in the long run. The next thing is luxuries disguised as investments. I see this all the time, and a lot of my friends actually also seem to buy luxuries branded as investments. So for example, I see this all the time with mattresses. They say invest in your sleep, and this one is actually pretty cheap, $2,000. One of my friends bought this mattress. It's called a Sleep Number. I don't know if you've heard of it, but they're very expensive. This one, for example, is over $10,000 or $206 per month with 60-month financing. Like, I've never heard of someone financing their mattress. And the Sleep Number is supposed to be very good, but $10,000? I don't know. I mean, I understand it's important to sleep well, but $10,000 with financing options? Honestly, here's my thought process. Let's stop calling a $10,000 mattress or a $50,000 truck an investment. I really don't think that's necessarily the right way to approach it, because you're just lying to yourself. The reason why is because of the definition of an investment. Really, the definition of an investment is something that produces a financial return. So I know some of you might say, okay, well, if I sleep better, I can work better, which really gives me more money. I get that. Or if you have a truck, it can bring you from point A to B, which then makes you money. I understand that too. But if you're really focused on just getting a good night's sleep, you can probably find a mattress for much cheaper than $10,000 to give you a good night's sleep, and you save a lot of money. Or you don't necessarily need that $50,000 luxury truck with all the bells and whistles on it. You can probably get a truck for maybe a used truck even for $25,000. You save $25,000, which you can then invest, and you still get from point A to point B. So really think about it that way. So I would suggest for you just to be honest with yourself. Is this an investment or is this a luxury? And if it's a luxury, that's okay. There's nothing bad about that. Just pay for it with guilt-free money and not with debt. That would be my suggestion. If you have $10,000 lying around for a mattress and you really, really, really want this mattress, then be honest. It's not necessarily an investment. It is a luxury because, a $10,000 mattress, it's quite a bit of money for a mattress. But then buy it if it makes you happy, but without debt. That would be the suggestion, right? The next thing, subscriptions that you forgot about. We already went through this, right? We saw this image that between 20% to essentially 30% of folks completely forget about their subscriptions and haven't seen them in the last 30 days. So if you signed up for a free trial months ago and forgot, then those monthly payments, right, the $8, $12, whatever, $30 a month, they feel harmless, but they really do add up fast. And I wanted to include this quote by Ben Franklin here. And he said, beware of the little expenses. A small leak will sink a great ship. And I think that's so true. In the beginning, you don't really notice it, but over time, over years, over decades, you notice it. And what I like doing is I'm trying to oftentimes think of it by times 10, like times 10 years, the 10-year rule, right? So if I have a $12 payment, okay, so $12 per month, then I think, okay, how does it look like per year? Okay, well, 12 times 12 months equals $144 a year, right? And then I think about it times 10 years. So how would it look like in a decade? Well, I just do $144 per year, and then I multiply that times 10 years, and we're looking at 1440 over 10 years. So, okay, that doesn't seem like too much money, but then what about investment? What about investments you could have done with that $1,500 basically? What about the compounding interest rate that you could have accomplished with these $1,500? What is the opportunity cost with these $1,500? Could you have gone on vacation instead? Could you have maybe started buying a house instead? The questions keep coming. So it's really important, I think, for you to do a quarterly subscription audit. Take a look, sit down, and see where your money is going automatically every single month. And then I think it's good to cut out maybe the one that you least use, right? That would help you. Emotional spending, which oftentimes results in debt. Again, the average spend per impulse buy, we have reviewed this in 25, it's $25. And oftentimes you see these commercials like, in this case, a dealership says you deserve a new car, a new a designer says you deserve a new purse or whatever it is, right? They oftentimes try to play on your emotional feelings by saying you deserve it. I'm sure you work hard, but you don't always want to spend money, especially when it results in financing and debt on something you think you deserve. We want to stay away from that. So those $180 massages that you think you deserve, or boozy brunches on a credit card, again, debt, those are really resulting in long-term stress, which we do not want. We want to stay away from that. So my pro tip for you is, first of all, plan your joy. So no impulse purchasing, plan everything. How much do you want to spend? So that's your budget. And then enjoy it guilt-free. That would be the tip. So here's a step to fix and reclaim thousands of dollars. First, track monthly spending. So I would suggest tracking between 1 to 3 months worth of spending, every single cent that you spend. And then I would suggest that you cut the bottom 10%. So the bottom 10% of expenses that, maybe are $5, $8, whatever, they're not that big on your budget, which means they're probably also not necessary, like your rent, like food or whatnot. Cut those out. You do not need them. Use that $10 or that 10% of money that you now saved and redirect it into your investment account, into paying off debt, things like that. And then use the 30-day rule. Anything that costs more than $100, wait, hold off, and don't buy it for 1 month. And then after 30 days, if you still want it, then you can buy it, because clearly you have an attachment to it. And if not, you just saved money. And who knows, maybe it's more than $100 that you saved. You saved the $100 plus all of the compounding interest that you could have generated from that $100 over your lifetime. So that's actually a good thing. So the moral of all of this is you don't really have to deprive yourself financially. The most important thing is stop leaking money into things that you don't even care about, like unused subscriptions that you haven't used for the last 30 days. That is what you want to make sure you cut. So important as always, start building wealth now, starting today. And if you found this video helpful, I would really appreciate it if you like the video and if you share it to help others. Subscribe to my channel. It's _MMW, as you can see here, for more cool insights. And then definitely join my newsletter, which is in the link description below, for more exclusive tips. Your bank accounts will thank you later. Take care, guys.